Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast, where we focus on how authors found success, looking at strategies that have taken them to the top of the bestseller charts, as well as what they've learned from their mistakes. Because being an indie author is more than knowing the latest marketing trend. It's about being innovative and creative and learning from your mistakes.
Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. I'm Sara Rosette.
And I'm Jamie Albright. And this week on the show we have
Tanya Ann Crosby.
Yes,
it was such a good interview.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. So informative, like tons of notes.
I know, yeah. We talked to her about translations because she's done over 100 translations across like 5 languages, and she's just really knowledgeable about it. And this interview, it kind of has given me, I've kind of changed my mind. I had a mindset change after listening to her, because she talked about how she had a period where she couldn't write new content, and she decided she would work on translations. She would exploit her intellectual property.
Right.
But, you know, I've always been so focused on the next book, getting the next book out or the next series. But I have 20 books that I control the intellectual property on. And if I'm testing out German, and if that does well, it would make sense to focus on that and get those into other languages, you know? I mean, because I'm to the point where the other day I was like, I really should get up at 5:30 so I can get my words in. But I'm to the point that I'm not really wanting to get up at 5:30. I want to set up my life in a way that I can get up about 6:45 or 7, you know?
Exactly.
So this has been, I thought about this interview a lot after it was over, and I was like, I think I'm going to make a couple of changes in the way I do things. So.
Okay. Yeah. I really just am looking at translations completely differently now too. And I had sort of dismissed them, not dismissed them, but just sort of thought, okay, I'll put them on the back burner for the first part of the year. But I'm going to look into some different markets, not necessarily German, maybe French, and maybe some South American sort of markets and stuff, and see what happens. It's a little tricky with romantic comedy. So,
yeah, but she talked about that. Yeah, she talked about how she did not start in like the big markets. Like she didn't start in German, which would be sort of counterintuitive. You would think you would want to start in that. And she said she worked up to those. And I thought that could be really smart, because you would learn, you know, you get all your mistakes out, hopefully.
Correct.
In your ones that maybe weren't going to sell as much. Then when you got to German or whatever your big language would be, then, you know, hopefully you'd have your system down, which would be great. So, yeah, very interesting.
It's a great interview.
Yeah. So we'll keep everybody updated with our translation stuff. So this week, talk to us about this week. This week has been a little weird and crazy.
What's been happening in our world this week, Sara?
This week has been like, I've been calling it the snowpocalypse.
Snowpocalypse. I saw somebody called it Dallas, Alaska.
Pretty much.
Hilarious. Yeah. Houston.
All of Texas.
All of Texas, really. But yeah, we live in Houston, so that's really what I'm focusing on. Yeah, it was bad. It's bad. Everybody knows. You've seen the news. We've been made fun of, but that's okay. You know, the bottom line is our homes are not built for this kind of cold.
Kind of weather. Yeah.
I mean, they're just not. They're not insulated to the point, to that level. Yeah. They're just not. And
I mean,
the Texas electric grid system, that's a whole
has a lot of improving to do.
That's many podcasts that we don't do. Yeah. So, but for us, we did lose power. It was funny because people started losing power on Sunday, and oh my gosh, we just felt horrible for them. And we had power all day Monday, and really, we're just #blessed, feeling really sorry for people. Conserving, we turned off everything that we did just so that they could have, there'd be more power. And then at 6:30 or 6:45 or something like that on Monday night, ours went out. and stayed out until Thursday. And
it's just not a good situation to be in when it's so cold.
Yeah, we still had some water. We still have water, but then Tuesday, a pipe broke in our attic and just poured through our ceiling in our, we didn't lose the ceiling, but it poured through the vent in our bedroom. And so we have some damage there. But, compared to other people whose, entire ceilings fell in and stuff, what we're dealing with is just an inconvenience. We still don't have water, and what's today, Sunday? I've completely lost track of time. Our biggest concern for us is my 10-month-old grandson living here, and, trying to keep a 10-month-old warm at night safely is a little tricky. But, we managed, and after the pipe broke, our son, who lives in Austin, called one of his friends here and said, "Can my parents and sister come stay at your house tonight?" And because we didn't know anybody that had electricity, and so we went and did that. That was good. Yeah. And because I think it was down to 48 degrees in our house at 2 in the morning. It's got
incredibly cold for here. Yeah. And it's just incredible.
Crazy times. But, we got our electricity back. And, like I said, all we're dealing with is some inconvenience. We're using pool water to flush our toilets. So,
so you are okay.
Yeah.
As long as you can do that.
Sarah let us come take a shower at her house today.
Yeah.
So
nice. We kind of had the inverse because we lost water at the very beginning because, like you were saying, we're not set up for this type of weather. And we lived in Spokane, Washington. We've dealt with cold weather, snow for weeks and weeks on end. And so I did what we always do. You just open up a faucet in the back of the house and let it drip. And we have everything winterized outside. But there is a difference in winterizing for the South when you have this type of Arctic air coming because and I did not know that. And so our pipes froze. And so we had no water for about, 2 or 3 days. And so we were very, very lucky that the sun came out. I think it was on Tuesday or Wednesday, and just the heat from the sun and the temperatures came up just a little bit, just enough that everything it started melting. And so I think that's when a lot of the pipes broke around town because as it starts to melt. But anyway, so ours actually melted with no pipes breaking, which I couldn't believe. And so that was good. So now, and then after that, I was just waiting for the power to go out or for something to refreeze because you just really don't know. There's a lot of...
And it's so weird because like I was telling you today that a friend of mine that lives just kind of a mile from you, not even a mile, I don't think, they lost everything on Monday morning at 1 a.m. and didn't get it back until Friday. So
so you just don't know. It was very random.
It's just crazy and random. And y'all, if you're the praying type, pray for people because there are still people that are really struggling here. And send good thoughts because there's a lot. We can't get a plumber out now. Again, we're just dealing with an inconvenience, but there are a lot of people that are in worse shape than us that can't get a plumber. So
because everybody's just overwhelmed, and they're working. Our neighbor had a pipe break, and we were like, "Here, call our plumber," and they said they're working 24 hours a day, and they're going as fast as they can, but the amount of people who have had damage impacted, is just crazy. Yeah. So
how much writing have you gotten done?
Not much at all. And I had big plans for this week, but oh well. But when it happened, I thought, this would be a good time to gather up all my tax stuff, and I couldn't even do that because I was trying to. It's just the anxiety of not knowing what's going to happen. And, and then, we were dealing with one of our kids is in Austin and trying to help her figure out what she's going to do and where she's going to go. And, so basically not much writing got done this week, and in the past I would have beaten myself up for that, but I just thought, it's okay. And I just, anything I try and write this week is probably going to have to be revised anyway. So I will just not even worry about it. What about you? Did you get anything done?
I wrote 674 words yesterday and I was exhausted when I finished. My goal was a lot bigger than that, but I got 674, and I just decided to be okay with that. And today I haven't written, but I was thinking I might go in there and see if I can get another 600 words or something. I mean, I just, at this point, we're just trying to live, you can only do what you can do. And, I'm not really feeling bad about it either.
Well, I think
I've kind of already made peace with that with the past year. And, and I know myself well enough now that I know that if I sit down and really try to make myself right, I'll just end up being more frustrated. So, just kind of letting it go. Tomorrow's another day, and we'll figure it out from there.
Yeah. And that's about all we can do. And I did want to say that we were just like, both of us were in just like survival mode for like about the first half of the week.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's different levels. And like, I think Jamie is still in survival mode. I think our family's kind of coming out of it a little bit because our situation is a little bit better. But we did go in the Facebook group and post about what was going on. And just thank you to everyone who was so sympathetic and, was sending good wishes our way. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And, we'll take all those good vibes we can get.
Yeah.
So
I've often said I would be a terrible pioneer woman, and this living without water really confirms it for me. But I did want to say, aren't you going to be on?
Yes, I think this week. Yes, I think my interview will be that I did for the Creative Penn. I think comes out on Monday if all goes according to plan. So
when this comes out, it will be yesterday.
Yes. Yeah. So if you want to find out about, how to write a series, that I have a short nonfiction book I did on everything I've learned and everything I wish that I knew about writing a series. It's all in there. And that was a really fun interview.
Good.
So hopefully that'll be out Monday. If not, I'm sure it'll be out soon.
All right. Let's get on with the interview. It's much more interesting than our woes.
We don't need to talk about melting snow and all things like that. All right. So here's Tanya. So today we're really happy to have Tanya Ann Crosby with us today. Hi, Tanya. How are you?
Hi. Great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, we're so glad you're here. Yeah.
So let me read your bio. Tanya Ann Crosby is the New York Times and USA Today bestselling author of 30 novels. She has been featured in magazines such as People, Romantic Times, and Publishers Weekly, and her books have been translated into 8 languages. Known for stories charged with emotion and humor and filled with flawed characters, Tanya is an award-winning author, journalist, and editor. And we're so glad to talk to you. We have lots of questions for you today, especially about translations.
Yeah, we do. So tell us how you got into writing.
Wow. So that was, I don't think I've, there's never been a time that I didn't know that's what I wanted to be. There was a time when I wanted to be like a ballerina / archaeologist.
Yes.
I always wanted to be.
My granddaughter.
Me too.
That's what she wants to do. Yeah.
So I wanted to be a ballerina until I realized that, that really hurt my feet and I didn't want to do it. And the archaeologist thing, that really sounded great. But in fact, one of the reasons why I got into writing historical romance was just because I love history and archaeology and, anthropology, I love that stuff so much. It was a way to sort of incorporate, all the ologies into my life. So I've just always known that's what I wanted to do. And, when I got out of high school, I got married. I got married not right out of high school, but I was like 22. And I always thought that I would go back to school after I had my children because I wanted to go back to school for, to learn my craft.
Yeah.
And I ended up doing that much, much later again. But so I had my kids and I just gave it a shot. I read this wonderful romance called Kingdom of Dreams by Judith McNaught and thought, I want to write books like that. Mm-hmm. So I wrote my first book and then I was like, so, just had such a lack of confidence that I bought like 100 manuscript boxes and I put them all together and stacked them up against a wall thinking I would go through all those rejections and then more. So wow. I know. I put it. So then I ended up. I sent my manuscript to. This was back in like 1989. I sent my manuscript to 10 agents, and I think like 7 out of the 10 wanted to.
Oh wow!
But I was one of my mistakes was I actually went with the first agent who wrote me back and didn't do the research. And she was my first agent for a while. And then I ended up moving on. But she asked me where I wanted to go. And I said, well, let's start at the top of the line. Let's get rejected by the best first. We went to Avon and they bought it. So, it just kind of, that was it.
Wow.
I got on the gerbil, the treadmill at that point and never got off.
Wow, that's a great story though. That's exciting.
Yeah. And a lesson to aim high too, go ahead and aim for the best. And then, if it works out, that's great. So,
So, it's a funny thing. I not having a lot of, I think I talked a lot about confidence when you and I first started talking about doing this. And, I wish I had approached this business with a lot, with more confidence. But, it's funny that not having the confidence and thinking I was going to be rejected so much, that I would shoot for the top. And I think it was because I thought, it would maybe be a bomb to my ego if we started at the top and I got rejected by the best. And then I was like, it'd be like, okay, well, this is still, I just wasn't good enough.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's great though. But I think that a lot of people who start younger are the same way, and some people can push through that and do what you did. And some people just can't. Like I didn't start writing until I was 50, and I tell people all the time, I couldn't have started one day sooner. Like my skin was not thick enough to do it even one day before I started doing it because I had a lot to learn. And I just think it's timing. But I think that pushing through and just going for it is awesome. Yeah. I'm pretty impressed. And in 1989, that was like the gold star. I mean, you couldn't have done any better.
I was 27 at the time.
Yeah. So, still young.
Yeah. Still young and stupid enough to, but it worked out. And, and I did, I learned, I would have to say that I'm a much better writer these days than I was back then. Thank God, but, I think I started with my first book. I did lots of head hopping and whatever, and I had to learn the ropes along the way. But, the public kind of saw my mistakes as I grew, which has its pitfalls. But,
yes, it does.
Well, what is your definition of success?
These days, I think one of the things in the questionnaire you guys sent to me, one of the things I said was that early on, you measure your successes by maybe more concrete goals. And for me, initially, it was selling that first book, making the list the first time, making the next list, selling more books, all of these goals. These days, I really kind of define my success in much different terms. If I can write the books that I want to write, then and entertain my readers and make a living, I'm content enough with that. I still have stars in my eyes and really want to, go for the gold. It's, I try that with every book and, just one of these days I'll be that household name and I tell myself that and keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So what do you wish you'd known about writing and craft when you started?
What do I wish I'd known? Lots, but but again, going back to the confidence thing, it's really, I think that's a really important, whatever your unique voice is. I mean, I read this book a long time ago called, I think it's it's not Pinker's Practical Grammar. I can't remember what it was, but it was all about, learning the rules so you can learn how to break them. And, so I think it's important to learn your craft. But it's also really important that you realize that you're not competing with anyone else. You're competing with yourself. And if I allow myself to, to add anybody else to that mix, it will make me crazy. My competition is with me personally. And so I wish I had more confidence to really kind of explore my own voice versus trying to mold my voice to be something that, so I think that even though that spark of my voice was in my early works, I don't think I really found it till later when I had the confidence to just write as I was meant to write.
Yeah. I think it takes a while to come to that. And
I do too.
Yeah. And part of it, I think when you're starting out, you're still figuring out all the how to pace and all these things, that the technical stuff. And it does take, I feel like I'm much more comfortable with my writing now that I've been doing it for, 15 years than I was at the beginning. So, but you're partially indie, or you hybrid, or all indie, or?
So I started out traditionally published with Avon Books. I did my first, I wish I knew these numbers.
It's okay.
I'm in awe over them, but I think it was like either 13, 15, something like that. My first 15 books for Avon. And then I think I wrote 2 for Harlequin, 2 for Kensington. And so these days I do my historicals, I do for do indie completely. And my women's fiction, I do I don't. I do for I was with the Story Plant, and I'm working on a project that my agent is going to shop soon. But I feel like women's fiction is a little harder.
Yeah, I think you're right for indie. Yeah,
yeah. Do you think being indie has given you some of that freedom to explore what you want to, the stories you want to tell?
Absolutely. And I think that more than that, even, it's allowed me to since you can measure, again, successes, small successes by the metrics, and you can see what's happening, you kind of learn that, hey, sometimes, the publisher didn't know better, and so you can kind of make these little, you're not the Titanic, and it doesn't take you like, hours to turn your ship, you can turn it on a dime. And, you don't have to hit that iceberg. It's just, I love that. I love the fact that, we talked about, cover artists and doing, I think I told you I paid for way too many. I invested in so many covers. So I don't even want to know how much I've spent on covers through the years. But it's allowed me to see what covers have worked. And, you can kind of change courses just so quickly like that. You can see this cover I uploaded this cover and it did great. And that one not so hot, this kind of blurb worked really well for me. That one didn't, so.
And you can change that. That's the whole point. Yeah. Like you can fix it. Yeah.
And I like being in control. So I don't really see myself ever being, just completely trad again. Never. Yeah. I mean, I think that, they still have traditional publishing still has a lot to offer us in the right circumstances.
Yeah. Well, that's a good transition, talking about covers and blurbs and stuff, into marketing. What did you know? What do you wish you had known about marketing?
That's a tough question. You guys did ask me this up front. So there's just so much. There's so many.
That's what everybody says. Everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much everything. Like you just have to, unfortunately, kind of go through the list of mistakes. Everything from what we just talked about: covers, blurbs, advertising, all of it. You've got to. There are a lot of hats to wear, and you've got to be willing to wear them all if you're going to be indie. You can't just throw your book out there and have it not be edited or not have the best cover possible, or it's got to be a professional product, or it's just not going to work.
So what assumptions did you make at the beginning of your writing career, and looking back, did they turn out to be right or wrong?
So at this point, that was like 30 years ago. I think I was just kind of just doing the job,
Right.
So I can't really say what I expected then, versus now. But at the start of my indie career, I was a major control freak, and I thought I didn't have control over anything then, so I'm going to have control over everything now. And so that kind of sort of imploded pretty quickly, and I realized that was just that was what. You're wearing too many hats at that point, and it's just not possible.
Right.
In fact, one of the reasons why I got into doing my own translations was because I was doing so much that I burnt out. I went through a health scare, and I was writing 2.5, 3 books a year, which is a lot for me. I'm a really slow writer, and it was just too much. I was doing all that plus the marketing, and I was trying not to cut corners anywhere, and it really just, my health went downhill really fast. Like I actually had a serious life death scare about 5 years ago.
Oh my word.
Yeah. So instead of, while everybody else was writing more and more and more, like pick up the pace and put out another book, and, lift your number of releases from, 3 to 6, I kind of sort of dug in my heels and said, I'm not only not going to put out 6 books this year, I'm not putting out any. So I needed to see that I was going to survive this without, I had to take a break, sort of take a deep breath. And so what I did during that time was I started to try to figure out how I could monetize what I already had. And so, I'd already done audio. So I figured, what about translations? Well, my first language was Spanish. And my mother, I grew up with around my mother and her friends, one was French, another was Italian, another was German, so our household was very multicultural. And so I thought, I'm comfortable with other languages. So, or if I can't read them all, I can fluently read both, Spanish. I mean, we read Spanish and English, but I can't do, Italian. I kind of understand bits and pieces here, but I know people that I can reach out to. So that's kind of how I started. I thought, and I don't like being told that you can't do that. Like, so as an indie, it's kind of like, yes, I can do that. 5 years ago, it was like translations, you can't do translations. This is, but yes, you can do translations. And so I kind of set my mind to figuring out how to do them, and did.
That is terrific. And I think that's an interesting angle, because a lot of people, if they can't release as often because there's a big, I heard Becca Syme refer to it as the cult of speed, where just more books. And if you can't do that, then it's like more ads. So right. I think that's interesting that you leaned into translation. So we have lots of questions about that in just a little bit for you.
Well, we can dive right into that if you want to. I just I don't know where you guys are, in the.
Yeah, that would be great. Well, you sent us some information, and you've translated over 100 books into various languages, right?
Yes.
So can you so you've told us a little bit how you got started. So can you tell us like how you handle the translations themselves, and any tips or ideas for people who want to get into that now?
Right. So one of the biggest barriers, obviously, is the cost. Translations are expensive. And when I first decided to do this, I did crunch the numbers, and I think at the time, I can't remember. I think it was 30 books or whatever. So I did the math, and it was going to be seriously $750,000.
Yeah, that's a big number.
Yeah,
we can hardly say it. Yeah,
I know exactly. to actually do those translations, if I did them all direct. And, and I started thinking about it. I thought, well, not only do I not want to invest that capital up front, but it's not smart to do it with certain languages anyway,
right.
And, so it just really, that wasn't feasible. So I started looking into, I did lots of research, researched lots of platforms, and I found BabbleCube, which is kind of an ACX type. And there are a couple of them, companies like that out now. It's not just them. And they may or may not be the best of them. I used them just mainly because that was, they were the furthest along. And at the time, I trusted them most. So what I decided to do was, and there were so few, there was no way for, even on BabbleCube at the time, there was no way for you to actually reach out to translators, because they didn't, the way that they actually sort of formulated that dashboard was that translators could find you, but you couldn't really find them. But I did the research like on Translators Cafe and other places, and found the translators that I wanted to use, and then took them over, asked them if they were willing to do it on BabbleCube. I chose certain languages to start off on BabbleCube, and those were languages I knew that I wasn't going to put the money out for direct translations, and those included Spanish. Even though I speak Spanish, and I did seem like they would be the easiest ones for me to do. I went to Spain a couple of years ago and sat with my cousin, and she actually told me straight to my face, I love her, but she said, I hope you don't mind, but I downloaded your book, basically from a pirate site, because I can't really afford to buy this. So it's okay. Well, it just seems to me that I don't think that their culture is, I don't know. I shouldn't. I don't know if I should say that. They seem to be huge pirates, but
there are certain cultures where that's more. Yeah. I mean, Kobo has said that's one reason they started the Kobo Plus in the countries they did, because piracy was high there. So.
And I think Portuguese is another one. As well. I can kind of back that up by saying that out of all my translations, the ones that seem to end up on the pirate sites are the Portuguese and the Spanish ones. So mostly, it's like not like it's never another language, but it's mostly theirs. But I started with Portuguese and Spanish and Italian on BabbleCube. I found that I couldn't find a lot of French translators that would go to BabbleCube because, or German. And I'm kind of glad that I couldn't find them early on, because those are really good languages to do direct. Direct. And so what I did is I actually put a couple of my books up, and I just kind of found translators that I trusted, translation teams, and I don't advise having, it's better if you're especially if you're doing on BabbleCube, there is a way for them to work as, a team, a translator and proofreader together. I would not work with just a translator. I would make sure they're willing to be on a team, and the proofreader should be of your choosing. So I started there, and as the money, I was pretty determined that I wasn't going to spend my own money on translations, that I had to, whatever I earned from BabbleCube, that was what was going to go back into translations. And I was very pleasantly surprised to find that, at first it was, small bits that came in, put it all aside. And I did my first German translation, and German was, wow. I put that up, no promotion at all. And, literally my books, I started putting those out every 3 months, and those bonused in KU for a year and a half.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's great.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
And you did those direct, right?
I did those direct.
Wow. Yeah.
And I did French too, but I think I started out with contemporary in French with my suspense titles, and those did not do as well. However, my historical titles did really well in French. So that's another thing, is BabbleCube can be a really great way to sort of test the waters, so that you're not putting your hard-earned cash into, obviously the translators, somebody's taking a risk here.
Right.
And BabbleCube makes up for that by giving them the majority of the money up front, which is fine, because after 5 years, you own that translation, and you get to upload it, on your own, wherever you want. This year, I think I get back like 36 titles.
Wow.
So yeah, because they started this, 5 years ago. They keep they keep your rights for 5 years, and so I get like 36 of them back this year. Those go up wherever I want, direct KU, wherever I want them to go. I get 30 something back last year. So 5 years is, if you start planning, treat it as a business plan and start ahead, 5 years seems like a long time, but it's really not. It passes quickly. You're doing other things in the meantime. And, so anyway, that's how I approached it.
That's great.
Terrific.
I'm going to wait on the next question because I have a question off that question.
Yeah.
So when you do direct, like to Germany, I've heard, isn't there an issue with the translator and the copyright?
So there is, but so the German translators actually own the copyright. They are the but it was actually my German translator who helped me formulate a contract that actually around that. So essentially you have to pay them royalties. That is what, but if you've reached an agreement and they're getting enough money up front, they should be willing to sign a contract that basically gives him, I think my contractor and I determined it was like 0.0001% of royalties, which is not even worth asking for, So, she can ask for it if she wants to. Yeah. But the way I've got the contract worded, it's like, you have to request it. And, at this point we'll consider, this is how much I'm giving you. Anything beyond that, this is where our payments stop. And if you want royalties, you have to request them. And then at that point, it's like such a minimal amount. And then there's a couple of other little tidbit things that you have to include in the contract, legally, so that they belong to you. But so there's a way around it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, I had heard that, but I knew there had to be because there's too many people doing it, but I just didn't know exactly how that worked. So very good. Yeah. So then on your translation, did you have another question, Sarah?
I do. I have a follow-up. Okay. So I was wondering about the time frame for your translations. Like, I think I've heard, it can take up to a year. I'm working right now with Reedsy to do one in German, and it's taking several months. But I've also heard of translators that turn it around really quickly. And I think part of it is the kind of like the indie mindset versus the traditional mindset. So what have you found for timeframes for just the actual translation itself?
So anything under 3 months, I'm wary of. Just because I feel like, even if they're I actually have some translators who are actually using software right now, but they started out translating for me without the software. They got the software to actually help them along, but they still they still are doing, they're going through and they're doing the, they're giving it that personal touch. And so I think a lot of those people who are willing to turn it around in like 30 days, I would kind of look at that that's a red flag to me. And I probably would not accept that. I think for a good translation, it's possible. Is it possible that it's not, that it'll be a good translation? Sure. But, and if you want to try it, absolutely. But one of the things that I did when I would get submissions, eventually I did start getting submissions through BabbleCube, but you want to make sure that you are paying someone who is not actually going to be doing translations to actually do the vetting for you, so that you're not just accepting whatever comes in. And, but there's so much. One of the mistakes that I did with one of my very first translations was I took on I accepted a translation through BabbleCube by an Italian translator, and she actually was she wasn't using software. She was actually a good translator. But the thing was that she was accustomed to translating erotica and soft porn. So the language that she used was really offensive to my readers. So I got so many complaints, and we ended up having to pull that book, and just because my reader was horrified. They were, you just can't. That's not historical romance. Just doesn't have that that's not who our audience is. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but that's not the audience for it. So you have to be really careful about the context.
Yeah, I hadn't even considered that. Yeah. I mean, that just not anything I had ever considered, because you're right. They're translating your words into something, into another language. So they would use,
they have to match the heat level of what you have.
Oh my gosh, I hadn't even thought about that. Great point.
Yeah. So I think it wasn't even that she was adding more love scenes. I think she was describing them very like.
Yes. She was just, describing them more graphically than Right.
Well, what about covers? Do you do new covers for your translations?
I don't. I just there are some covers that I test. Like now, I test new covers here and there. For different markets. But honestly, I kind of found that it doesn't. Like, I do think that the Italian market does have a certain cover style. That Italian readers recognize as this Italian writer. But we're not fooling anybody. These are translations, American translations. And I don't really think that just giving them a cover, I haven't found that one sells better than the other. Like, I've done translations, covers, that matched what, I did the market analysis and did covers that, I felt matched what they were accustomed to. And I did not find that it actually sold better than just putting up my US cover.
But just with the the title and everything changed. That's interesting. Really interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah. So you talked about this a little bit, but do you do promotions for your translations?
I do. Early on I did not, because there was not very much competition. Like, I didn't have to. I mean, I didn't start investing the money into them.
Oh, the good old days.
Yeah, no kidding. I didn't start investing into them, as far as promo until I had to, because why should you? If I'm making bonuses in KU for a year and a half, I mean, what's the point? I mean, I can do better. Sure. At one point, actually, my translations were bringing in, and I don't do poorly in the U.S., but my translations were 65% of my income.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I didn't think there was a problem with that. So I didn't put the
So that's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't put the money into it. But these days I do AMS ads for we have access to all the different markets. I do AMS ads for them. I'm a little more methodical with them, because I obviously don't speak those languages for the most part. So it's a little harder to, to call the keywords that you need. And, it's a little more time consuming, a little harder. So I probably don't put as much time into them as I do, or I guess I should say I don't do as many ads there as I do for the US. Okay. But there are also a handful of BookBub type promotional newsletters as well.
Yeah.
So do you put copy in your AMS ads or no?
No, I do have. No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't do copy.
Okay. Because I was going to say you would want to do it in the language, correct?
You would if you were doing it. Yeah. But I don't even think they allow you to put copy, not even in KDP. I don't think they allow you to put copy in those, because I think that they just kind of know that you're probably going to mess that up.
Yeah. That's probably true.
So I don't think in any of the programs that I use, I don't think they allow for copy.
Yeah.
So
when you have a new release now, do you just plan on a translation as part of your release? That's just part of your process. You don't. So do you have all your backlist pretty much translated now, or?
Everything, pretty much. I mean, there are a handful of books that I haven't, and I did slow down with the last couple of books, because I feel like there's a lot more competition now, and and so I don't know if that's the only reason. I also started a publishing company, and that started by accident as well. But now I have, I think, 16 other authors that I publish as well. So, there's a lot of work to do already. So, maybe once I get to the point where, I delegate a little better, then I can kind of look at some of those again. But there are some series that I just have done automatically. Right. Other books that maybe are standalones that I might skip in like French or, Portuguese or whatever. But I do now have a really great stable of translators that I automatically go to.
Yeah, I think that's what holds a lot of people up is the finding the people to help you translate and make sure it's all good. That's a big hurdle. Yeah.
Some of my friends, I've actually paid more for some of my translation than some of my really savvy girlfriends. They actually took their, so long as you do the legwork, meaning you get the right people to vet, who know your own style. It's important that they know what kind of books you write. They read your books. They know what, the context of your story should sound like. And then you have somebody really great that can help you vet the submissions. Then if you go to, I think it's I think they went to Upworks for their to look for translators there and paid much less than I did and got really great translations. So it's possible to, there's lots of different options now.
Yeah. It's all good to know.
Yeah, it is. And your catalog is big. I mean, that is not an insignificant number of books that have been translated. So I think that's
it's like 130 books I've done.
Yeah, that's so great. Yeah. You're really ahead of the curve on that because let's see, about almost 5 years ago, a lot of people were talking about translations, but I just don't think they did it the right way. And they may not have had it might not have been the right genre. Historical's pretty, I think, not safe, but I think that's a good genre to put out in other countries and see how it goes. So good for you.
So I think one of the reasons why, maybe it worked out for me where it didn't for some others is that, it's really easy to just see, Google and see, oh, here's a translation company and they charge $10,000 a book and, I'm going to just do this, but for me, I had a couple of things, maybe going for me that, first of all, I'm really comfortable with the different languages.
Right.
And have people in my life that I could reach out to. But second of all, I'm cheap and I didn't want to pay $10,000. And I'm a control freak. So I would rather do the legwork and find the right people. And all of those. Plus I got sick and that, even though it wasn't fun, it was a really, really scary time in my life, but it, having slowed down like that gave me the, I found out a couple of things. I found out I could stay relevant and not write 10 books a year.
Right.
And it just, you have to learn to market your books and you have to learn to exploit all the rights. And so it gave me time to explore the translations.
I think that's terrific.
Yeah. It is. Necessity is the mother of all invention. Yeah. When your back's against the wall. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let's circle back to some of our other questions and kind of talk about lessons learned and things. So have you ever had a mistake that turned out to be a good thing?
Actually I let me look real quick because there was a couple who were, not that ended up being a good thing, not so much. But after you sent me the questionnaire, I started thinking about the mistakes that, beyond approaching the business with more confidence. I know this is not really answering your question directly, but one of the mistakes it wasn't a mistake. It was a mistake, but it wasn't, I don't know that I would change it because I love what I wrote and each of my books at that time had, was on fire for them. So, but writing all over the place in too many genres really does sort of slow down your progress. And that, I would say that I did sacrifice some momentum with my sales and my books by not focusing on a genre. So there was that. And the other thing mistake that I made that, I wish I had, and I don't know if this kind of is a sort of related to the confidence issue or whatever, but, early on, I was really afraid to make use of my my networking contacts. I think I was in this online writing group at one point with Tom Clancy, and he and I had very, very different political views. We argued all the time, but I guess I impressed him, So he called me one day and he said, "Hey, I really want you to call my agent and tell them that." These were his words. It was like something like, "Well, you want me to keep the PC sometimes." He said basically, that you are a dummy if you don't use this, because I'm giving you permission to do it. But I still couldn't do it because I was like, I think I even told him, look, we've become friends, and I don't really want to encroach on I don't want to ride your coattails in any way, shape, or form. That's not who I am. So no, thank you. So he ended up calling his agent at the time, and it was Robert Gottlieb, I think. And he said, he called his agent. He said, "Well, this dummy won't contact you. So I'm telling you that you need to actually reach out to her, and I want you to represent her." So he reached out to Robert Gottlieb, reached out to me, and I ended up going with them. I ended up getting rid of my other agent and went with them. And, and that was a positive thing at the time. And I've since moved on from that also. But, one of the things I told you in the questionnaire that you guys sent is I don't really know that I believe in mistakes necessarily. I think we learn as much from our mistakes as we do from our successes.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. I think a lot of times
that's a great story though.
Yeah. I think a lot of times we learn more from our mistakes than we do from our successes. And I think as long as we can process that and figure out what to do differently, then it's okay. So that was one reason we wanted to do the podcast, was just to, explore these different things. So it's a great story.
So what about the opposite? Have you ever had anything that you thought, this is a great idea, and it turned out not to be so great? And I'm going to mute so that you got...
all the time. I do that. I just have ideas that I think are just brilliant. But I think that's one of the reasons why I've been able to actually, and again, this goes back to the whole thing where, I just don't think anything's really, even if they didn't, it just kind of ended up being a total flop, I don't consider it a mistake, because I feel like I learned so much from those mistakes. But, but I tend to kind of go, you can ask my friends, who've known me for a really long time. They're like, "Oh God, Tanya has an idea, get out of the way." Because I'm just really, I'll get an idea, whether it's for, a box set theme or whatever, and I will I get the idea and I run with it, and so sometimes they do well and sometimes they don't. So I could probably list hundreds of ideas that did not go well, and vice versa, you throw spaghetti at the wall and it sticks.
Yeah. I just think that's so evident by the fact that you said, let's go to Avon first. That's just fantastic. Yeah. So I would guess if you did Becca Sum's Strength Finders, Activator would be pretty high in your strengths, because it's what it sounds like. Yeah. That you just take action.
I'm an oldest child, which works really well for for the indie publishing business. Yeah. Not so much sometimes for marriages. Yeah. Especially when you're married to a youngest child, but exactly. They do say opposite attract, right?
Yeah. So, exactly.
Yeah. So, but I think that has to do with the fact that I'm an older.
Me too. Yeah. I'm a number one as well.
Me too.
I prefer number one to oldest. Yeah.
I'm the oldest child of my mother was, I was born in Spain, my mother's Spanish. And so she basically, I'm the oldest child of an immigrant, so there were a lot of times that I basically was the one who had to my mom had problems. So she would come to this little 5-year-old, "Hey, what do we do?" "You speak English, you tell me." Because at the time I was the only one that spoke any English,
Right.
So, it was, that's what that.
It does shape you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm an oldest child too. And I heard it described one time as the oldest child is the icebreaker in the parental life. In life, you're your parents are doing the best they can, but they may not, you're up there.
They're experimenting.
Helping. Yes, they're learning with you. So, yeah.
Right.
So another question we always like to ask is, what is the biggest mindset change you've had to make during your career?
Probably that would be, to stop being such a control freak. I am, I think I kind of have this sort of mindset that unless I'm doing it myself, it's not going to be done right, and I just have to do it. And I think that's a mindset that leads you down the wrong path too often. And I feel like that's been my greatest mindset change, is I'm now starting to let go, like pry tasks out of my rigor mortis hands, but just to give them to other people, because it's just not, it's not really a wise thing to take on all tasks, especially if you want to, keep moving to the next level.
Yeah. And I bet with publishing more authors, you've really had to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, another thing I noticed about your website is that you have a shop where you sell signed paperbacks. And I wanted to ask you about that real quick too. Can you tell us how you set that up and what the reaction has been from the readers?
So that was a really easy setup. I use Shopify. It's a really easy setup, but I don't put the energy into that maybe others do. And I do sell books off it, but I wouldn't say that it's it's a lot of books. I think it's I haven't dismantled it yet, but and it it's not really extra work. It's just I have not had, that's one of the things that I have not had tremendous success with. I've had more success actually moving into at one point, and you asked what about change in mindsets, and one of the things I've changed my mind about is when I got into the self-publishing in 2011. I really thought it was all about ebooks, and really I've learned since then that there is still a market for paperback and even hardcover. And so moving into I sort of got off my butt and did the Ingram account. And I actually sell quite a few books through Ingram, both paperback and hardcover. And hardcovers seem to do really well with like libraries, and I don't do large print. But then but the mass market size, I decided when I went into KU that I wanted to, and that's what actually started it. When I went into KU, I decided that I wanted to have a really, really competitively priced paperback out there, so that I could offer that to readers on other platforms. And as it turned out, I sell a lot of those. Like that's so I do those for all my authors now as well. They're just they do really well.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah. I found the same thing with Ingram and paperback. And I did the same thing when I went indie. I was like, I remember writing an email to a reader who wanted to know when the print book would be out. And I was like, well, everything's going ebook now, and I have to focus on that. And I look back on that now and kind of cringe, because there's still a lot of readers who like print. And once I started doing Ingram, I saw lots more sales in print as well. And so, yeah, it's just.
So for me, for a new release, I can easily sell between 500 and 1,000 copies for the new release. But I actually know other authors. I personally know other authors who can sell 5,000, for a new release. Wow. So it's really not, but for me, I consider that a success for historical.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, I do too.
Because
that's just books that's money people are leaving on the table if they don't do it, Yeah,
I'm in the process right now of putting all mine on Ingram. So
yeah,
good for you. I think that's, I think that I wish I had done that much sooner. And I was doing the KDP paperbacks, and and I do still do the KDP paperbacks because I think that still reaches another market, not market, but another contingency. So they do reach different markets, and so I think that's one of the things that I really learned is that I really have to have your finger in all of these pies. And it a penny here and a penny there, it all adds up.
Multiple streams of income. Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. Well, what's the biggest thing you think you've done to set yourself up for success?
I guess the best thing that I did to set myself up for indie publishing is I actually took a 10-year hiatus. I was very, very discouraged when I left traditional publishing for lots of reasons. They promised a lot of things that they ended up not giving me, and I was really very discouraged by that. The politics of the business just kind of really very nearly did me in. And I took a 10-year hiatus, and I was working in Dallas, Texas at the time. And, for a while I went to work as, in the marketing department at Match.com. And for a while I was the editorial director at a stable of magazines. And I was editorial director overseeing like 5 different publications. So between all of those things, I think that between the marketing skills that I learned at while at Match and in various other companies as well, and the editorial experience that I learned, it really kind of set me up to do exactly what I'm doing right now.
That's terrific. That's really great. So
really good.
Yeah. So this has been so good. And we just thank you so much for sharing, just the information you have about translations and your career and how it's changed. So we'll have the links to your website and everything in the show notes, but can you just tell people where they can find more about you and your books?
Yes. So you could actually, I'm on, at this point, most of my books are actually in KU, but I do still have some books wide. You can find out exactly which books those are on my website. And that's www.TanyaAnnCrosby.com. And also on that website, and I will give this to you, there's actually a link with some information, because I did this conference a couple of years back, and have the presentation that I sent to you guys, plus some additional information. I can give you guys the password to that, and people can download that if they'd like it.
For translations?
Yes, for translations.
Oh, that's great. Oh, that's great. Fantastic.
Yeah, that'll be wonderful. Yeah. All right.
I'll be looking at it.
All right. Yeah. If any questions at all, feel free to ask me.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great.
Yes, it has. Yeah.
Thanks. Bye, everybody. See you next week.
Bye. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. We hope this episode inspired you, empowered you, and made you laugh a little bit too. If you loved it, tell your friends about it. And if you feel so inclined, leave us a review. We look forward to being with you again next week.